Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Polyhedron Collider episode 39. I'm Steve Tudor.
I'm John Cage.
And I'm Andy Lewis.
Hello, welcome along, boys.
Hello.
39 episodes. We're almost 40. It's almost middle-aged.
Steve is almost 40.
Steady.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not going to deny that.
This year, in fact, is it not?
Yes, it is, yes.
Oh, dear.
Not oh dear,
Yes.
it's a great excuse to have a mini board games convention. Hell yeah.
Well, yeah, that's what Amanda seems to be planning at the moment. So rather than doing like a big party, we just basically hire out like a church hall and play board games all day.
Works for me.
Okay, so a few weeks ago, we went to Airecon.
We did indeed.
Mm.
And much fun was had by all.
It was indeed. And we actually did a live show, which is our first ever live version of the podcast. And if you go back in your feed, it's the previous episode to this one. And it wasn't really a full-on podcast. What we did is, rather than a seminar, we just fired a load of questions at a load of other podcasters and bloggers and vloggers.
We did. It was all right.
Yeah, I thought it went really well.
Yeah. Managed to get some half-decent audio out of it, was quite impressed with.
Surprisingly, yes.
Shouldn't be a surprise with our audio wizardry and know-how, surely.
Is this the same audio wizardry that we're employing this evening by turning all of our video off because the bandwidth isn't high enough?
That's Skype. That's something else.
Yes. I tell you what, it's still sounding really ropey.
There's definitely something going on the internet tonight.
I think you're right.
Yeah, well, we just have to make sure the string doesn't get... The string's got cold, that's what it is. Because it's like, Beast in the East #2, The Revenge of the Beast in the East.
That's it.
It means it's frozen our string.
That'll be what it is, yeah.
It's like Winter keeps storming out of the room, then coming back and going, and just one more thing.
Giving it the Columbo effect. It'll come in a brown Mac later. You just wait.
Smoking a cigar.
Yes.
So Airecon, we played some games, didn't we?
Well, we played some games. We got to meet some lovely people. We had a bit of a, as I said, had a bit of a live show, drank some girly cocktails, and...
Hey, those were very manly cocktails.
Those mojitos were amazing.
to be fair, they were. I can't believe that a raspberry mojito was so tasty.
Oh, yes, that was delicious. It's just a shame the environment was like being at some kind of mosh pit at a rock concert.
No, it wasn't as nice as that.
It was loud.
It was a horde of screaming 20-somethings.
Yes, it was not ideal. Although we did get recognition. Was it like 3 times we got discovered as basically celebrities?
Yeah, I quite like that.
It is nice.
I mean, the most Z-list of Z-list celebrities, but we'll take it.
Triple Z.
It was quite nice to have people that come up to us in the bar and say hello.
That was cool.
But the really surreal moment was when somebody asked John to sign their copy of Game of Trains.
I didn't quite know what to do. I was like, yeah, of course I will. So I signed it and then thought, when you sign stuff, should you do like a special autograph signature? Because I
Draw
just
a
did
penis
like,
on it.
Well, that's one option, Andy. But I just signed like my regular signature that I'd put on my credit card and things. And I thought, God, that's a really clever way of just getting like someone to just, just hand off their signature.
Yeah, so I keep a careful eye on your bank account over the next few weeks, John.
I'm sure that individual is as honest as the day is long.
Sure,
if it's who I think it is, and I'm deliberately not naming him because he wants to be named on the podcast, and I'm refusing to do it just out of spite. Then
Seems a bit harsh.
he's been itching to meet you and say hello for quite a few weeks, and wants to get mentioned on the podcast.
Oh, that's cruel.
Well, this chap did say I was his favourite.
Yeah, he did, and that's exactly why I'm not mentioning him.
He's right. I mean, you can't fault him.
For some value of right between 1 and 0.
Yeah. So yeah, it's nice to be recognised, nice to be appreciated for what we do. There was quite a lot of people that came up to us after the live show and said they'd had a lot of fun doing it, or they really enjoyed being in the audience. So I'm going to call that a win.
Yes, it went well.
Yep.
Well, all right. It wasn't a complete and utter disaster anyway.
It wasn't a complete and utter disaster. We did have a weird problem with some people trying to set up something else after us, and they were talking over the top of us, which was quite bizarre. But I think you couldn't quite catch that on the live recording. I think, which was all right.
No,
yeah, it was all
I think
right.
it was quite enough as far as the microphones were concerned.
So what, boys? What did we play during this magical weekend in Harrogate?
Actually, I was quite surprised how little I played during that time.
Time went so quickly. Saturday almost
It did.
disappeared.
We didn't play many games, but we did spend quite a lot of time playing games, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we played a few long games, didn't we? Which seems to take up, I think every single game seems to take us like an hour and a half longer than we first anticipate, which is the same problem we had at City of Kings a few weeks back.
Yes.
Yeah.
The first game the first game I played when I got there was Lords of Hellas with you, Andy.
It was.
And you,
Well,
John.
we
In
all
fact,
played.
We all played it, and we played it with Karen from the... No, it wasn't Karen, it was
No.
Martin from Geek and Son, wasn't it?
It was
That's
Martin, yes. Karen said, no, I've got to be professional. Martin, sit your ass down. You can play.
Yeah, Martin... Karen said he's got to be professional in front of his boss, Martin, who Martin then proceeded to play the game.
Yes, exactly.
Harsh.
It's all fine. But no, I've been trying to get you guys to play this for since I've got it. This is a Kickstarter from Awaken Realms. It's been fairly high profile. It was delivered, month, maybe 6 weeks ago now, of This War of Mine as well. It's the Awaken Realms have done their sort of major first one, so this is their second one. We've already talked about Nemesis, so Lords of Hellas is an area control game, primarily, with massive amounts of miniatures, some small,
Ludicrous
some huge.
amounts of miniatures.
Yes, and you know the best bit is this is only the base box. There's another sort of 4 or 5 boxes to come.
So how do they change it then?
They're going to add more of the monuments, the really big miniatures,
Right,
the
okay.
bit that's made of 5. So the idea is of the game. There's 4 ways to win. You can either build these huge miniatures, which are made up of 5 segments. So you can take a special action in the game to add a section to one of these monuments, and you get a special bonus. You can, if you control one of these monuments for 3 turns, then you win. You can control 2 of the 5 lands in the game. I think it's 5. So essentially, this game is a bit like Game of Thrones light in a way. So a bit of area control, a bit of fisticuffs between players. So you can move your hoplites, which is sort of your little sort of standard miniatures, into a little area of a land. You control that area, and you can control its city, or its. You can build a temple there to get priests, which will level up your heroes. And you have a slightly larger miniature representing one of the Greek heroes, which is either I think Perseus, Heracles, Achilles, or Helen of Troy.
Mm-hmm.
And each of these heroes has a special ability, and you can send them off on little missions, which can give them a better bonus, and beef them up in order to beat the crap out of all the mythical beasts, such as the Medusa, the Minotaur, the Cyclops, Kerberos, all of these things, which are represented by fairly hefty miniatures as well. So this is very sort of miniature focused.
The heroes also boost your little armies as they're moving around and give them some extra abilities depending on which one they are. So each one gets some slightly different, unique attributes they can use.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, so each hero gets a special ability and a starting bonus. So if you use that special ability well, then it should stand you in good stead. And also when you build temples, which get you priests, which means you can pray at one of the monuments, which gets you a level up, you can gain ongoing bonuses called blessings, which Steve was originally not entirely convinced about, which then give you sort of everyone an ongoing bonus. You do a little sort of card drafting mechanic when you manage to build one of these things, and you keep an ongoing bonus, which can help you achieve the 4th win condition, which can be to control 5 temples. So there's 4 ways to win. So there's lots of ways to approach the game, and all of these things work really quite well, actually, because I've now played the game 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And every single game has been really close. So everyone has got to almost a winning position at about the same time, which is a good thing.
Yeah, because the game we played, me and John were like about a turn away from each other from winning, weren't we?
Yeah.
So John won that game, but if it'd been another turn, I think I would have. Victory was within my grasp, shall we say?
Yes, and 2 turns before that, it was 1 turn within my grasp, and until John decided to invade me, which I thought was quite rude, actually.
It was a carefully calculated plan.
But yeah, I think it's fairly safe to say we all enjoyed that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the way which, as you said, there was completely different ways of approaching it, and I've got to admit, I don't like the Game of Thrones analogy that people make.
Really?
Because I don't think it's anything like Game of Thrones.
It has one very small aspect in that you're doing territory control.
It's a dudes on a map game, as the phrase, the common phrase is, and I think the feeling of the game is so very different to Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is all about alliances. It's all about, promising to backstab one of your neighbours on behalf of like another neighbour. It's all about careful diplomacy about where you are. Whereas none of that diplomacy really exists in Lord of Hellas. I mean, you could, in theory, do that kind of diplomacy across the table and say, well, I'm not going to attack you or I'm going to attack you. But in reality, you're just out for yourself in this game.
Yes.
And there's none of that wheeling and dealing you get with Game of Thrones. I mean, have you played Cyclades or Kemet, Andy?
I've played Kemet. It is quite like Kemet in a way.
It is more, yes, right. I wondered if it's more like Kemet, because I've got to admit, it looked a little bit more like it, but I haven't managed to get... Even though this kind of game is one of my favourite styles of games, I've actually played very few of them. So, Cyclades and Kemet and Inish, which is the one you've also got, is, the same
still
kind
to
of
play,
theme.
yes.
Well, yeah, the Shelf of Shame or the Shelf of Future Fun is burgeoning with its load at this point, but...
The pile of potential.
Pile of potential, that's it.
I like that one. Good way of putting it.
So yeah, I quite like the way you could, as I said, approach this in completely different ways, because I started off trying to claim territory in this game we played, and then realised that with a couple of the power-ups I'd got and a couple of the artefacts I'd managed to wangle, that I would be better off just going straight for the monsters.
Yeah.
And especially once I'd twigged how to use my abilities against those monsters. It was like, right, I just need to get to the monsters now. Oh, bugger, they're all up on the opposite end of the board. Right, march across, off we go.
And they keep wandering around as well. So even when he caught up with one, it's like, no, come back. I was going to kill you.
And it turns around and goes, no, you're all dead. Blammo. So yes, it was. There was a nice little mechanic in the game where essentially on your turn, you sort of move all the little things around the map, and then you can do one slightly bigger action. And those bigger actions you can only do once in every, I'm going to call it a cycle.
Yeah.
So everyone will sort of do their turn, and the turns do actually go quite quickly. So there's not a lot of downtime here, so which is quite good. And you have your turn, it rattles through. You'll do a special action, then the next person will go do their special action, and you keep going. But every time you do a special action, you have to mark it off, so you can't do it again until someone basically sticks their neck out and says, "Right, I'm building one of the monuments." And at which point the whole thing resets. But in building the monument, the monsters then sort of wake up and go, aha, it's my time to shine.
Yeah, it resets for everyone as well. I quite like that.
Yes.
So you can sort of, if you're watching other people, you can get some idea about when they might be likely to do it. And you can be like, yeah, okay, I'll wait for them to do the reset. And then yeah, there we go. Okay, thanks very much. And then on my turn, I can crack on with what I actually wanted to do. Excellent.
Yes.
There's a lot. It's very... I wouldn't say it's very time dependent, but you can, as you say, John, take advantage of fortuitous timing, I think.
I quite like the fact as well, you can get a reasonable amount of the way through the game and then realise that the strategy that you'd originally adopted isn't necessarily going to play out quite as well as you first hoped. But you can switch strategies. Like, it's not like you find yourself so entrenched in one particular idea that you can't just switch and, try something a bit different. Like, I was originally going to go for area control and then thought, actually, there's no way I'm going to be able to win this. And there's other people getting much closer, much quicker. So maybe if I just switch... Well, then I thought, so I'll switch to capturing the monsters. And after a couple of turns of failing to get anywhere near them or do anything useful with them, I was like, actually, there's an opportunity here. So I'll switch again.
Yes, it is quite dynamic like that. It's very good. Because, you illustrated to me when, I was literally one turn away from controlling two lands. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you invaded me. You got literally two areas from me in a single turn. And all of a sudden I was looking pretty ropey. So it's amazing how quickly the game can turn against you.
Yeah.
Which is good.
It's another one of those games as well where it's not just about having a solid strategy. It's also encouraging other people to do other strategies that weaken your opponents at the same time.
Yes. No, I enjoy it. I'm glad I backed it, actually, because, yes, there was this fear when the Kickstarter was in progress that, oh, yeah, it's just another dudes on the map. It looks pretty, but there's no game beneath it, etc., etc. But it turns out there is, and a bloody good one at that. So I'm rather looking forward to all of the expansions and the game expansion. A lot of fun. Yes, there's a lot to it as well. There's a 5th and 6th player expansion. There's loads of other miniatures and monsters and monuments and board expansion and goodness knows what else. So that's going to keep me quiet for quite some time.
Nice.
You mentioned earlier, I did have a slight quibble with the game, which was to do with you could build temples, couldn't you? Which are at the monuments, because you could build monuments, you could build temples.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And when you built temples, when so many of them got built, this card drafting occurred where everyone would get an opportunity to get a power up for their character.
Yes.
And it's not a problem that's inherent with this game, because we also played Rising Sun this weekend, and I think it's a problem with that game as well. It fell down to that problem that it was a competitive game and people's abilities were on little cards on the opposite side of the table.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't think this is a problem inherent with this game. I think it's actually a problem that's quite common amongst a lot of games of this ilk. That I do something and then somebody go, you do realise you're going to get your ass kicked because I've got this ability and this ability. It's like, oh, for crying out loud, I can't see that from over here. I can't, without standing up and walking around the table and checking what everyone's got kind of thing. It's a weird analogy, but if you've ever played, which I don't think either of you have, if you've ever played War Machine, and I played a couple of tournaments with War Machine, it's a bit like 40k, but all the units are cards. And the same goes for X-Wing, actually, because X-Wing does a very similar card system. There's a point in the game where you will have to stand up and walk around the table to the other side of the table and look at every single ability the player has. But you will actually have to stand up and walk around, because if you don't check these things, you're going to be screwed or be surprised by something happening.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't know why. I don't know. I think the problem I have with cons is I tend to be really knackered during cons, so I actually think I'm a little bit grumpy most of the time. And I think when something happened, I just kind of went, that's really annoying. I'm very annoyed now because my plans haven't worked because I couldn't see what everyone's abilities were.
I remember that. It was It was an ability I had where you marched into my land with some grand plan to probably ruin me in some nasty way. And I turned around and went, well, you can, in a DM voice. However, I do have that ability that means that when you do that, I'm just going to march like 4 other troops into that same land and you're going to lose. Do you want to reconsider?
Never!
But as I said, we played Rising Sun, and I think Rising Sun, I actually had a bigger issue with that. Because Lords of Hellas, you had like 3 or 4 of these things, which were all contributing effects to the game, but I don't think any of it, in hindsight, I don't think any of them were actually overly powerful, were they?
No.
I think it was one of those games where everyone felt that everyone else's cards were overpowered, and you felt like your own were underpowered, but at no point did it actually, in hindsight, you kind of went, actually, no, they were all about right.
I think the real thing is that in Rising Sun, things seem to stack a lot more.
Yes, exactly. So those cards were like, suddenly someone's ability, you could combo up, and they were like, oh, hang on, we don't want to attack them, because if we attack them, they're going to do X, Y, Z. We can talk quickly about Rising Sun if you want, but we'll quickly mention we did play it with Elaine and Efka from No Pun Included, and I'd like to say thank you very much, because Efka took us through the rules, which I'm very glad of, because even though I'd read the rules, I don't think I was quite prepared for going quite way through them. And Efka very graciously taught us everything.
Oh, that's very good of him.
It was a good introduction to see a bit of everything. Break it down into small little pieces.
Oh, that's right. That's when I was playing Doom with Karen, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And kicking his ass.
You made an analogy between Game of Thrones and Lords of Hellas earlier. I actually think Game of Thrones is closer to Rising Sun. I actually say even Rising Sun is even more a negotiation game.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, sure.
Because you're constantly forming and breaking alliances.
So that was Lords of Hellas. That was by Awaken Realms. And Adam Koprinski, who is also the designer of Nemesis, which we did mention in the previous episode. So I think we were all rather chuffed with that, weren't we?
Yeah.
Yes. Rather glad I went balls deep.
I am rather looking forward to playing that again, I must admit, and I want to try a different strategy this time.
Likewise. And a different faction. That would be interesting.
Yes. So what else did we play then?
Well, speaking of Kickstarters,
Yes.
I received another one. For some reason. It's been quite a busy month, actually. The last 6 weeks, I've been basically receiving about a game a week.
Well, to our listeners, every time one of us receives a game, whether it's a D&D book, a game we've bought, a Kickstarter, we always send a photograph on our little Facebook Messenger group to the other 2 members of the podcast team. So me and John have been slowly drip feeding some odds and sods in, whereas Andy had the week where it was like, and this has arrived, and this has arrived, and this has arrived, and this has arrived.
We're sat there like, I feel so inadequate right now.
Yes, and you should. But yeah, it does mean that 2017 was an expensive year.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, yeah.
Because within the space of about 6 days, I ended up getting Hannibal and Hamilcar, Lords of Hellas, Rise to Nobility, Grimm Forest. What else did I get? Cave In for Star Scrappers.
So many that you can't actually remember them all.
Pretty much, yeah. And eventually City of Kings, which I got 4 days before John. Ho, ho, ho.
It's fine. It's arrived now. It's all good. It's all good.
So have either of you punched that bad boy and sorted it yet?
2 hours it took me.
Didn't take me as long as that, but it did take me longer than I expected.
We have fingertips just desiccated at this point.
14 punch boards.
Yeah, punching it wasn't too bad. Like, that was quite quick, but sorting it all out took quite a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you have that horrible point when you sorted half of it and went, I've run out of baggies, or the little plastic toolbox tub I've got to put it in isn't big enough?
No, kind of the opposite.
Actually, no, there's tons of room.
Part of the problem is that it ships with about 1,000 little baggies, of which you need maybe 10%. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you're just sort of looking at this lot. And I know, I've seen some of Frank's videos, and I've watched the video on how to put it away about probably a dozen times. And there's a bit halfway through where he goes, so you put all your tokens in the component trays. Here's the component trays. And he sort of fans them out, and you can see half of the bottom one. And then he fans it back in again. It's like, whoa, what's in the bottom one? What am I supposed to put in all this stuff? How am I supposed to fit it all in? Did those things go in the trays, or was that what went in the bags? So yeah, there was a bit of back and forth trying to work out where it all went. But it does eventually fit.
It does. It's well designed.
Yeah, it's no mechs versus minions, but it's good. It does fit.
Well, I don't think anything's going to beat mechs versus minions, is it?
Well, for inserts, timely. That's a nice segue, actually, you've done there, Steve.
Pew.
Thank you very much.
I see what you did. That's almost deliberate, wasn't it?
It was indeed.
Well, a contender for Andy's insert choice of the year 2018 is one of the Kickstarters I've just mentioned, which is Grimm Forest from Druid City Games. We interviewed James Hudson, who's one of the project manager there. Basically, he's the gaffer. And must have been about this time last year, actually.
Wasn't far off, yeah.
Maybe slightly earlier, and that turned up as well. So I brought it down to Airecon thinking, this is a nice light game, let's give it a go. It's possible that we were all a little tired at the end of the day, but having played it with Elora, so we played a 2-player game, and then obviously played a 4-player game with you guys. I think disappointment is probably the word to describe how we felt, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of agreeing with you there as well, yeah.
I would like to play it again, just in case it was, like you say, just because we were a bit tired and, yeah, we just weren't really feeling it. But it just didn't feel like it flowed particularly well to me.
No.
I thought it was a particularly pretty game.
Yeah.
But I've said this about games in the past. There's a kind of deja vu, which I'm going to call game-ja vu, actually, come to think of it.
Game-ja vu.
Whereas I feel as if I've played this before. And when I say I feel like I've played this before, I feel as if I've played a game which didn't look as pretty, but fundamentally was the similar or the same, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yes.
Which one?
Well, this is it. I can't. That's why it's Game-ja vu,
Yeah, okay.
deja vu. If I could say it's exactly the same as Game X, then I could say that game's a rip-off. What I mean is, it may not necessarily be exactly the same game. It feels like I've played this before. It doesn't feel like I'm playing something new and different.
Yeah.
We had this with Petrichor, didn't we?
Yes, Petrichor, and did we ever actually work out what the Petrichor game reminded us of?
No.
Exactly, but we felt exactly the same, didn't we?
Yes. No, I know exactly what you mean.
I'm going to say, to the listeners at home, let's give a brief description of what it is, because I've realised we've already got into our thoughts about explaining what the game actually is.
You control one of the, weirdly, 4 little pigs in this particular game, and you are trying to build houses of either straw, wood, or bricks, as per the fairy tale and with the big bad wolf coming along. And you have 3 areas of the game where you can go and grab these resources from. The idea being that if you end up in the same area as everybody else, then you share the resources. If you end up there on your own, you grab all the resources.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an incentive to go somewhere where everybody else isn't. Along the game, you get help in the form of friends, little cards that give you essentially a special ability, which are other characters from all of the Grimm fairy tales, such as Red Riding Hood, the Fairy Godmother, those sorts of things. But you can also play what are called fable cards, which are generally dick moves. And every time you decide where you want to gather resources from, you can play, you don't have to, one of these fable cards at the same time. And they're resolved in different stages throughout what they call the sort of first part of the game, where the gather phase. And then everybody else sort of does their own thing, takes a couple of actions to try and build their houses, and then you go round again. So it's quite a straightforward game, mechanically.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think John's right. It doesn't really flow that well because we really struggled with a lot of the card resolution. And I have to say, the rulebook isn't particularly clear in a lot of places about what to do about some of these things.
It was the order in which certain cards fired off was the one that got me.
Yes.
Yeah.
We just made a judgment and said, like, turn order at that point, didn't we? But there was a definite point where some cards would have affected other cards depending on whether they were played before or after each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like one would have stolen resources and one would have given you some resources from the bank, as it were. So if the person got the resource from the bank first, then the other person could have stole them. But if they'd stolen them first, then they would have had resources, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So there were things like that where it was kind of like, I don't know whether we were overthinking it, but it didn't, as you said, it didn't flow because of this problem we had.
There was that, and there was an awful lot of, well, for my experience, there seemed to be an awful lot of wasted turnitis. So you'd carefully craft an idea, like, I'll use this gotcha to, stuff that person over there, and then I'll go over here, and it'll all be good. Except every single turn, it just seemed like one person or another's card that they played basically nullified any chance of me doing anything. So I'm not bitter, but it did feel like I just had no effect in that game. I just sat there waiting for the next thing to happen to me. And it wasn't like you got any heads up about what other people might play or that your stuff still affected them. It's like even the bad stuff that I was trying to play back to people was already being nullified by something they'd done. And I just spent the whole game just sat there like, yeah, okay, let's go again. Oh, that's over. Great.
Yes. No, I agree, John. It suffers one of the cardinal sins in games that I don't really like about random games. I don't mind randomness in games as long as I can do something about it. But I think in Grimm Forest, you were definitely a victim of it. Is that basically there's nothing you can do about the randomness. If someone will just play something, you can't defend yourself actively or passively. So you basically just got to take your medicine and move to the right, which kind of blows and does get frustrating after a while.
Yeah, exactly. To be fair, I probably brought it up myself because I was quite lucky in earlier games that day. Everyone's like, we're not having him win a third time.
But what got me is there wasn't actually, I didn't feel there was much in the way of decisions. Like there was the initial decision where you secretly chose which of the, because we played a 4-player game, it's 4 areas you could go to. So like one area got your straw resources to build your straw house, one got your wood to build your wood house, one got your bricks to get your brick house, and then the fourth one, which was only used in 4-player games if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Was like a marketplace which had a combination of the different resources. So the decision you were making there was trying to look at what your opponents were doing and going, well, everyone else is building brick houses, so I'll go for a wood house. So there was, in theory, a clever decision to be made there about what everyone was going for. The problem was, I think everyone was doing the whole double bluff thing of going, well, I'm not just going to collect one resource, I'll get several. So there was no way of until like towards the end of the game where everyone had nearly finished building all their houses, there was no way of predicting. So you just ended up going where you thought, oh, that would help if I got something out of that pile this turn, so I'll go there.
Yeah.
That aspect just made me feel like we were just doing scissors, paper, stone every round. It's
yeah.
Like, damn it.
Yeah, pretty much. It was brick, stick, straw, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then the other decision to be made, well, there's 2 other decisions really to be made, was you got, as you said, you picked up these fable cards, which were the dick move cards, and it was choosing when to play them. And I just generally found, as you said earlier, because you had no idea what everyone else was playing, I just played them anyway.
Yeah.
Every time I had a card, I played it because they all were a benefit for you. They didn't seem to be very situational. But the last option was these friend cards you mentioned earlier, and the option was them is at certain points in the game you had to take a friend card, and then you either had to replace your current friend card with the one you'd drawn, or give that friend card you just drawn to another player. And that, I thought, was the only really meaty decision in the game, because you're trying to weigh up, well, is this card an advantage for me in my hand, or a disadvantage to someone else?
Mm.
And too many places it was just kind of like, well, it's an advantage. That's the whole point. None of these friend cards are bad. They're all good.
Just some are even better than others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it. I did not like that, because if you picked up a reasonable one and you had a really good one, so obviously you don't want to replace the really good one you've got with the reasonable one you've just picked up. So you think, well, I'll give it to someone else. But then you're thinking, well, hang on a minute. The one they've got's a bit crap in comparison. So basically I'm doing them a favour. So I'm either going to screw myself or help my opponent. I don't want to do either of those things. And there was no option to discard it, which kind of sucked.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the weirdly, my biggest problem with this game was the overproduction.
Yes, I absolutely agree.
And it's a dangerous word to say, because someone's going to... I think we're going to cause controversy by saying it was overproduced. I just feel it in me water.
That's not like us. Controversy.
It's not like us to say it's overproduced either.
No, exactly. I thought about 2/3 of the components in this game were completely superfluous.
It was worse than that.
Absolutely right.
They almost made it harder to play because you had to fiddle around with these tokens that didn't actually need to be there.
Mm.
I mean, some things really nice, like the little plastic miniatures of the pigs for your character were nice. The actual way in which you made the buildings, because you actually built the buildings and, they'd slotted together to make a little construction, actually not too dissimilar from the monuments in Lords of Hellas that we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought they were very nice, and all the cardboard tokens and the cards and the play mats and the resources were all very pretty. Then there was these monsters miniatures.
Yes.
And as far as I can work out, these miniatures served absolutely zero purpose.
Agreed. I mean, even the pigs were unnecessary. The whole thing, every single miniature, as lovely as they are, were absolutely vestigial and were completely unnecessary.
The only reason to have those baddies and pigs tokens in there, as far as I could tell, is just to remind you who'd gone where when you're doing all the resolution bits. That's pretty much it.
You could achieve that by just sticking the card there.
Now, I can understand the pigs, but I agree with the monsters. I think the cards did exactly that.
So it was, I think, I came to the conclusion that basically it's a £30 game in a £60 box.
Yes. I agree with you there.
Sadly, which is a shame.
If this game had been like 25 to 30 quid, you might have actually forgiven it a bit more, I think, as well. But when you think, I mean, I don't know what the retail price of this game is going to be at the moment, because I've not seen any copies in like the retail wilds.
Yeah,
but
we think it's about £60.
I think it's going to be about £60, and at £60, I really cannot recommend this game at all.
No,
Agreed.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, £30, yeah. 60, no.
20 to £30, you might have gone, well, yeah, there's a little bit of fun to be had there. It's light, it's silly, but at that price, no chance.
Yeah, for 30 quid, I think you could say, yeah, it's a really good it's a decent sort of family game for younger kids. And I think they'd have a lot of fun with it because it's not complicated. They'll pick it up quite quickly. And, it's quite whimsical and cute. But for the more serious gamers, no, it's too expensive. And I just don't think there's enough game there to recommend. So, yeah, a bit disappointed with that one.
Yep.
I'm inclined to agree, unfortunately.
Oh, dear. Never mind. So, if anyone wants to buy a copy of Grimm Forest, let me know. I'm on Twitter.
I'm sure they, who wouldn't after that ringing endorsement?
Absolutely, it's a brilliant game, brilliant game.
So that was Grimm Forest.
We played a couple of demo games with Mr. Paul Grogan.
We did.
Oh, we did.
Which I think he's starting to need his own bell or ding or something.
Trumpet. Edit that in later.
Paul was demoing, as Paul usually is at any games convention, Paul was demoing a whole myriad of games mostly from Czech Games Edition or CGE, whichever term you prefer, but some other places as well. Now, Well, we played 2 games, and I think we all really liked one and didn't like the other. So I'm going to mention the one we didn't like that much first.
Yep.
Which doesn't have a name at this point in time, because we've been told not to say the name that Paul told us at the time because it's going to change. But this was like, if you take code names and think of code names as like an Ameritrash type game, so it's simple, it's fun, it's quick, and then Euroize it, so put in loads of complication and loads of stuff on top of it.
Yep.
That's what this game was, in my opinion. It was a game where you had to try and guess a word, but the way in which you could give clues, there's like one clue giver and then everyone else was guessing. The way in which the clue giver could give out these clues was really restricted. So it was like drawing a card from a deck, which means they had to use what were they like? Was it like describe a colour or something like that?
You could tick off what colours it was or was not, including whether it was transparent.
Yeah, there was like this little console board which had lots of little different things on. And it was random about which of the things you could do. So the console had things like you could move a slider across to say how big it was, from microscopic to galactic. You could, as you said, put something on to say what colour it was. My favourite one was the CCTV.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the most
grid.
useful.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, you had 16 cubes in a 4x4 grid and you had to try and make the shape of the item using those cubes. But then the rest of it, the most common one was like these questions, which you draw 2 question cards and you had to choose one of them and give a clue for the word you were trying to say via that question card.
Yeah, and you're looking at it going, it's not really either of those. It's a bit like kind of like code names in that sense, that you have to sort of link them with a phrase or a word. And you're looking at it thinking, well, it's not really either of those things. So if I try and link it to one of or both of them, it's just going to throw them completely off the scent and make things worse.
I think it's worth saying at this point, though, this was translated and there hadn't been many checks on the translation. So it's entirely possible that some of the stuff that came through was worse to decode because, it might not actually have been as they intended it.
Yeah, and on the same note, this was obviously a prototype, and you kind of got the impression there was still some tweaks going on with this game.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think Amanda actually touched on the problem when we were talking about it later. Codenames is a very simple game and works because of its simplicity. And this felt like as if someone had purposely tried to overcomplicate matters.
Yes.
Yeah, they bloated it out.
Yeah.
How can we make this more complicated? What about if we had a 4x4 grid? What about if you had something in the size? How about colours? I think part of the biggest problem for me is that the initial word, there's no hint as to what kind of category it might be. It's just a noun.
That's true, actually. Yeah, now thinking back to it, there's absolutely no indication to anybody what the hell it could possibly be out of the entire universe of objects or things. You're given essentially 2 clue cards and go, well, that really narrows it down then, doesn't it?
It's like having 20 questions, except someone randomly picks the questions out of a hat or randomly gives the answers out of a hat. And you've then got to try and hint whether one or other of them is like a good representation or how close it is. When most of the time, the answer is nowhere fucking near what I need to describe.
Well, it was like the one you had, John. I think it was you, John, that had the chicken, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you get, is it 5 rounds, essentially? Each round, you get a different type of clue. Now, if you'd have got the noise clue, first of all, it would have given it away completely straight away.
Yep.
Whereas, I got the noise clue first when I did mine, which I was basically making a kettle. So I made the whistling noise. And I think after 2 turns, you guys got it. Because I'd managed to link, fortunately, steam and train and obviously the whistling noise. Whereas you just tried to describe the simplest thing of things, a chicken, took something like 4 rounds, and we had to have about 8 guesses just to try and guess a chicken, and it was horrendous. Now, I guess that's part of the game, but it just felt a bit imbalanced.
Yeah, I described how big it was, which was okay. And I'd done the little 4x4 grid showing you, broadly speaking, what it looked like, which was somewhere between a dog, a cat, a squirrel, but absolutely not a bird. It turns out drawing a bird with only like a 4x4 pixel grid is really tricky. And then it got to the point where it was use a vegetable to to link to it, and I was thinking, well, I can't have time. I was thinking about what you'd cook with a chicken. So I was like, you can't really have thyme. It's a herb, not a vegetable. And I was thinking, I couldn't work out whether corn would be a vegetable or not. It's having a bit of a moment. Yeah, obviously I know that now. So at the time I was like, well, potatoes. You have potatoes with a chicken. Like they'll make the connection to potatoes and food. Steve will make the connection because he can't have potatoes at the moment. He's going to get this straight away. Nobody got it. In fact, people were going further away from every clue I gave them. It's like, no, you're getting worse, if anything. Oh, well.
I think, John, actually, come to think of it, I think me and you, our brains work completely differently. Because that one time we played Mysterium and you were the spirit on Mysterium,
Yep.
I never got any of your clues. And the more clues you gave me, the further and further away I got from the answer.
Oh, God, yeah. I remember
The worst
that.
thing with that is that every time I'd give a clue about something, you'd go, like, I was starting to pick up on what people would take, but it always seemed to be about 2 turns behind. So you were trying to guess what I was trying to hint at, while I was trying to find hints that sort of worked for the way you were guessing things. And because of that, it's like we were chasing each other's tails. So I never actually got there. It's like, no, go back to your thinking 2 turns ago. I'm trying to tailor it to... Oh, never mind. We've lost.
See, we don't know what this game is going to be called, but at the moment, I'm not too excited about it coming out, to be fair. I don't think it's going to be a game for us.
It needs some tweaks, I think.
However, the other game we played was the new version of Pictomania. So Pictomania did come out a few years back. It's a Vlaada Chvátil game.
Gesundheit.
And it was previously published by Stronghold Games. But this new version is actually a new version. So Czech Games Edition are going to be releasing it rather than Stronghold. And it's a revised version. And Paul was saying basically what they've done is they've streamlined it. So they've taken out some of the complexity that they said was bogging down the previous version and made it a lot better. And I must admit, we had a lot of fun playing this.
It was good.
Did you not, Andy?
No, I was kind of bored.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't really enjoy it at all. It just wasn't for me. I mean, it took me a couple of rounds to sort of get it. I mean, when I did, I nailed you all. But although it seems that I'm a lot better at drawing abstract things than actual objects. But
yeah, I think that's where you struggled actually, because your brain worked back to front to everyone else again.
It usually does, yeah. But no, I just found it a bit too frantic and chaotic, and I didn't really click with it at all. It's not for me, unfortunately.
See, I loved the chaos and franticness of it personally.
Yeah,
that was what made it really made it sing for me. So what it is, it's like Pictionary in a way. In what you're trying to do is draw pictures of an item for a clue for everyone else, and you're given like a list of several different cards with lists of items on, and you'll have 2 cards, two things which designate which cards to pick and which item on that list it is. And then you're all going at the same time, though. So at the same time, everyone else is drawing, and you're also trying to guess on what everyone else is drawing at the same time that you are drawing. So there's a bit of a trying to move as quickly as you can, trying to grab because you do actually grab like the scoring tokens off other players. So you want to make a picture that's good enough for everyone else to see, because you need to lose your points that are in front of you for your own points. But at the same time, you want to act quickly and grab everyone else's points as quickly as possible.
Yep. I liked it.
I really liked it, and I could see me playing it. That was the thing as well. I could see me owning this and playing this with a few people.
Yeah, definitely. I quite like the fact that you're balancing between getting the picture good enough that other people are going to get it before going and guessing things.
Which is why you draw a cat flap instead of a garage door.
It was a garage. Cat flaps, to be clear. Cat flaps. First of all, I didn't see it. There was a cat flap on the list, so I'd have drawn it differently. But even knowing that, cat flaps hinge from the top. What I drew definitely hinged from the middle. Everyone knows that garage doors go up in the middle, right?
A drawing of a square, yeah.
Honestly, it was clear as day. You guys are idiots.
This is a game I will play with the parents and the in-laws. This is a game I will take round to people at Christmas. So it's not quite as universal then as, say, Codenames was.
Yeah.
But I can definitely, as I said, I can definitely see me playing this again, and I definitely see me playing this, say, like, just after Christmas dinner, that kind of thing.
Yep, definitely.
And I think it's much better than something like Pictionary because it was so frantic and it moved a good rate of knots as well. Because, I mean, it's been a few years since I played Pictionary, but I found that a bit slow and tedious, to be fair.
Yeah, Pictionary does get stodgy, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, Pictomania worked as a game. I could see its mechanics worked, and it was all very tight, and everyone sort of got stuck in. But it just isn't for me. It's really that simple. It's just not the sort of game I enjoy. But then again, I do like the big, heavy, dry, boring Euros, so that's probably why. There's too much activity for my taste.
It's too hyperactive for you.
Exactly.
There's not enough sitting down and thinking for half an hour between people's turns.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think we enjoyed it and Andy didn't.
So that's Pictomania. I don't know when it's coming out, but I can't imagine it'd be too far away because it looked pretty final, the prototype did, and I think they've even done the artwork for the front of the box already, so it should be out pretty soon, I think.
Yes.
Fair play.
I think it's time to ask some questions from the mailbag.
Hooray!
So if you want to send us questions, you can send us questions via Twitter. The normal one for the entire group is Polyhedron C. You can send them on our Facebook page, so facebook.com/Polyhedron Collider, or you can send them to the BGG Guild, which is Guild 2726. So what have we got in the mailbag this week, chaps?
Well, Ivan B asks, I'd asked if anyone had any burning board game questions, and I think, unfortunately, he may have taken that slightly too literally, because he said, how difficult is it to set fire to Monopoly? Can you use Cluedo as kindling? And should that be compulsory when you sign up to the Board Game Geek website?
Controversial. Well, not that controversial.
Not that controversial,
No, not controversial, no.
Given that I have a blowtorch in my kitchen, it's surprisingly easy to set fire to a board game.
Or anything.
Indeed,
Well, I've never set fire to a board game. I've not set fire to me Warhammer miniatures collection either.
That's not
true.
really a board game, though, is it?
No, but that's in reference to a specific event. That is. That's
I see.
When Age of Sigmar came out. So when Games Workshop announced that they were getting rid of Warhammer Fantasy Battles completely and replacing it with Age of Sigmar, there's a YouTube video of a very irate individual setting fire to his entire High Elf army.
Wow, that's short-sighted.
That's
Yes.
going to be something you regret quickly.
Yes, I don't know. I don't understand all the hate that Cluedo gets. Actually,
I haven't played Cluedo in years, so I don't know what it's like.
It's not just, I played Cluedo not so long ago, actually, because we had some friends to stay with their kids. It's all right. Although, I'm pretty sure Kaz cheated.
you shock me, sir. Do you know what? Speaking of which, I actually watched the film Clue a few weeks ago. I'd never seen it before. It's quite good.
Before.
I've
Clue?
never seen it before. No.
I've never seen it.
You know that's what the game's called in America, don't you?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. For some reason, it's not called Cluedo in America. It's just called Clue. Yeah, I haven't played Cluedo in actually. Well, did the version you have the full 3 endings?
Yes. Yeah, we watched all
'cause
3.
I only found this out recently. I quite literally found this out a few weeks back. When this went to cinema, it was random what ending you got.
Oh wow!
So
That's quite a cool idea.
If you watched it in a different cinema to like your friends, they could have like watched a completely different last 10 minutes.
Yes.
And so I think when it came out on TV and video release, they actually put all 3 endings on the end of the video.
Yeah, we watched the DVD. It's got all 3. It's a really good film actually, because you're watching going, is that there? And then they go through the stuff at the end. I won't spoil it for John because he's not seen it yet. But the way they do it and what they actually do for the recaps is really clever. It's a great film. It's a lot of fun.
I'll have to dig it out.
It is worth watching. I mean, it's been a long time since I've watched it, but it is worth watching that film.
Yes.
As for the game, do you know what? I'm going to say something controversial as well. If you play Monopoly by the rules, it's not that bad.
No, because everything goes up to auction and you don't have the stupid free parking thing and nobody puts money in the middle and it's over in about an hour and a half. I'm not going to say it's great, he says, owning 3 copies, but...
What? Hang on a minute. All the you've given me about Talisman and you've got 3 copies of Monopoly. That's it. That is the last time you ever criticised me for owning that game or enjoying playing it. 3 copies!
Yeah, I've not played it for a long time, though. I don't turn around and go, oh, it's amazing. But I bought Well, one of them is a former copy of my parents. It's really old. It's like from the 1920s or something. It's about 4 times older than we are. One of the original.
Blimey.
Really old. Oh, yeah, it's really old. It's like one of the original red boxed versions. I got another version of Monopoly in when I was at uni. This like the ridiculously sort of super duper pimped out version with a money tray and gold pieces and all this sort of stuff for the players. And then I think somebody bought me a copy, like my godmother or something bought it me for Christmas. So I've got a travel copy of it. So I've got 3 versions of it. Not that I ever play it, but there you go. I've got 3 copies of Monopoly and a copy of Cluedo.
Revelations.
I know. Never play them. They're just taking up space on my shelf at the moment.
Are they in the Kallax, Andy?
Yes. Just about, I think. At least one of them is. The deluxe copy is.
They're quite thin boxes, though, aren't they? They don't take as much room as a modern board game.
Oh,
Yeah,
the
that's
deluxe
true.
copy is massive, but
it?
the normal versions are quite small, yeah.
I got to admit, we nearly bought copies of them a few years back. There was a spate of, I don't know who the publisher is in the UK for these now. Used to be all
Waddingtons, I think.
Waddingtons, isn't it? Yeah. They did like wooden versions at one point, not that long
Ooh.
ago.
Yes.
So it was, the board was all wooden and everything, and it was, wooden Monopoly and Cluedo, and what was the other one they did that was the same company? Was it Scrabble as well, I think? And we nearly got them because they were very nice looking games, to be fair.
Yes.
But then I wondered, would I ever play them? You look at the Monopoly on the table and then look at Ticket to Ride next to it, and I know we'll just play Ticket to Ride every time.
Of course, because it's better.
Yes.
Maybe we should have like a shit games weekend where we play things like, Monopoly and Cluedo and Talisman
Don't say
and things
it.
like that.
Damn it. For a second, I thought you might let it go, but no, I should
Never.
know by
I'm like
now.
a dog with a bone. Do you know what, John? Actually, I had a brainwave the other day, because obviously your parents own this cottage up in Knapp, and Alora and I are considering going to Scotland, sort of end of July, start of August, when you're going up. So I thought if we did end up going up with you, maybe I would tolerate a game of Talisman and Knapp.
It's very kind of you.
Yes, I thought so. It seemed to be the place to do it, because that way I could deny all knowledge of it because no one else was there.
What happens in Scotland stays in Scotland.
Exactly. No Talisman for me.
Well, to be fair, that is where I've played that game most, by a country mile.
That's what I thought. It seemed appropriate if that was going to happen. I thought, yeah, we'll play Talisman there, if anywhere.
You
And
played-
if all else fails, you just drown your sorrows in fine ale.
Or drown in the sea to just end it all.
That first option is part of the game.
Yeah. It's
true.
now got to the point where I can't play a game of Talisman without a beer from Loch Fyne.
Yeah,
Oh, I fancy a Loch Fyne beer right now. Damn you.
like a lovely Mills Hills. Something dark and evil.
Right, quick, another question before I get thirsty.
Right. Capital City Entertainment say, I am making a board game documentary film, and I'd be interested to hear what films about board games already out there that you like.
Well, we just answered that in the last one. The Clue.
Yeah, Clue, exactly, yeah.
Ding!
There is also, I don't know how many board games are out there films about board games are out there. I mean, there's Jumanji, but that's not really a real board game, is there?
No, but
No?
that's probably in there.
Yeah. But there's also a film called Rounders, weirdly enough. It's not about Rounders, it's about poker. It's got Matt Damon in it. And it's a bloody good film. Not technically a board game, but certainly a tabletop game. And I do quite like a game of poker, and it's a very good film.
Okay.
Fair enough.
The only one I can think of that may be relevant is a documentary that was made, it's got to be 2.5, maybe 3 years ago now, called The Next Great American Game.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
And this is, it's quite an interesting documentary because it's following this chap, I can't remember the chap's name now, as he's trying to get this game about trying to get through a traffic jam published. And the documentary is half about him, I say half, let's say a third about him getting his game published, a third about modern board games and what's, introducing like the world to modern board games.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other third is really about him because he suffers from bipolar disorder. So it's him battling with his bipolar disorder together with the ups and downs of him trying to get this game published.
So I could imagine that being a very difficult combination of things to balance.
It is, because you really feel for this chap in places, because he goes. Basically, it's the only way at the moment I'm going to get to experience Gen Con, because there's a good section of the film is where he goes to Gen Con and tries to sell this game to a load of publishers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really fascinating when he speaks to some of these developers, and a lot of them are kind of like nicey to him, and then off camera going, "No, that game's awful."
Yeah.
Oh no.
Until you get to James Math, who I think it's Minion Games, who basically tells him straight up, "This game is unpublishable. It's absolutely terrible." Just, you feel so bad for him, but at the same time, you're looking at this game thinking, actually, this game does look a bit naff.
It's shit, mate. There you go, Matt. Done.
Randall Hoyt, that's his name, Randall Hoyt. Found the article. So that's the only film I know of that's like a board game documentary. I think it can be quite interesting.
Yeah, I think it could be. Although the only thing that springs to my mind is that Stranger Things mentioned D&D.
That is true.
Well, have you watched, it's on Netflix, and I assume it's on Netflix worldwide because I think it's a Netflix program, The Toys That Made Us?
No.
I've seen a couple of episodes of that. I saw one about the Star Wars figures.
Yep.
And I saw the start of the Barbie one. I think I've seen another one, but I can't remember which one it was.
Not a He-Man one, was it?
No.
Now, I thought that was quite fascinating and tangentially related because, okay, it's toys, so it's a bigger market, it's a bigger production and that kind of thing. But I thought because I've only seen the Star Wars one, I keep meaning to watch some more of them, but I found some of the decisions that were being made in the production of these toys was quite fascinating.
I think it's interesting how many games are coming out of films.
Yes.
But not very many the other way around.
Yeah, the inverse is definitely true.
I wonder whether it's just a snapping up of rights to these things, because I think
Probably.
Kickstarter has seen that some of these can be successful. I wonder whether the licenses for some of these things are actually quite cheap as well for a board game, because it's still a niche hobby, even though, we're explosion of Kickstarter and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I do wonder whether some of these people are not selling the license for as much as they would if they were making like a big commercial version of the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Speaking of which, how much is The Godfather? It's live buying with Andy again.
Oh, God.
About 60 or 70 quid, isn't it?
Yeah, it ain't cheap. I remember that. It's about 60 quid. There's an expansion. No, there's not. Different game. Boo. The Godfather trivia game. The Godfather, a new Don board. Here we go. Godfather, the board game. English. 70 quid. Bloody hell.
Yeah, before Andy gets into live buying and makes everyone speaking, you said that Dungeons and Dragons. I have a funny feeling there's a Dungeons and Dragons documentary as well, which I do need to watch.
That sounds pretty cool.
But I can't remember the name of it now.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that and thought about watching it, and then never quite got around to it. It does ring a bell.
Because isn't the I'm going to say the rumor here before we get sued or something that TSR were a bit underhanded with Gary Gygax or something. I've heard rumors or rather articles that something dodgy happened. I don't know exactly what, but there were shady deals done, and Gary was basically kicked out of his own game or something like that. But having read the Wikipedia article on it, something just springs to mind that he either got kicked out or there was a decision and he chose to leave or something like that. And obviously it got taken over by Wizards of the Coast sometime later.
That'd be interesting because I know TSR kind of imploded. I would say the best gaming documentary I've seen, though, which isn't a board game documentary, is King of Kong.
Sounds hilarious.
Have you not seen King of Kong?
I've not.
The name rings a bell.
It's about two guys, one of which is, I think the documentary makers make him out to be a bit of a moustache twirling villain. But he's a mullet bestowed man who sells hot sauce during the day, and during the evening he's like a semi-professional Donkey Kong player. And it's about him and another chap trying to break the high score world record on Donkey Kong.
Right.
Awesome.
It's definitely worth a watch. It's a fascinating film.
That sounds really cool, actually.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating some of the stuff they go through. I mean, these two guys basically had like a Donkey Kong arcade cabinet in their garage. And like one of them was even like getting acetates and dry erase markers and drawing platforms on the screen and patterns and things like that, so he could learn the patterns of where everything happened.
Right.
But it's a fascinating documentary because there's like allegations of cheating at one point. There's all kinds of like weird and wonderful things happening in this that you thought I wouldn't thought this would have happened in a just trying to get a high score in an arcade game.
But there's quite a few then.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice to have another one. I think, and I couldn't find. I've just been actually looking. Okay, man, look stuff on internet, but I've been looking, but I don't think this D&D documentary actually existed. I think I've made it up.
Oh,
You've made it up and implanted it in my brain, Steve. That is worrying.
No, can we do a Mandela effect? So I need to give it a name now, and
God.
then you can remember that it existed and confuse everyone. Like that stupid children's program you reckon existed.
The Children of Green Know is a legitimate book. There was a TV series. I've got the DVDs, and no, they're not filmed by me or including me in the cast. It just seems like there's very few people who saw this adaptation of the original stories.
So this is actually a bit of an in-joke. This is John used to talk about this TV program for years, and so our friends, none of our friends of the same age group remember this program at all.
because it didn't exist.
And so we've been saying that it doesn't exist, even to the point where we've been accusing John of being the sole editor of the Wikipedia page.
It's just harsh, man. So, Green Know, for the record, is a series of books written by Lucy M. Boston, and they were published from 1954 to 1976, and my grandparents used to read these to me. It's no wonder I turned out so weird, when I used to get these books and the Moomins and stuff like that read to me.
Oh, Jesus.
And then I watched the TV adaptations, which are pretty creepy looking back at them. So
Good effort.
The Moomins were bloody terrifying.
yeah,
The Moomins were great. Whoever thought those was on a lot of drugs?
yeah, definitely. In this kids' program, basically, it's about a kid who goes to live with his grandparents in the middle of nowhere, and the house is kind of haunted by friendly ghosts, which is okay. But the kid who's there and the friendly ghosts take the piss out of this tree, and his grandmother tells him off for taking the piss out of this tree. And then, right towards the end of the series, it's sort of hinted at that the tree's quite evil, and there's this massive storm. The ghost horse they used to go and feed sugar lumps to is panicking in the stables. Doesn't appear like it normally does to eat the sugar lumps.
Ghost horse?
Ghost horse, yeah. And then it bolts, but you never see it. It's so terrified. The kids run out there to try and save it. And as he's running back across the lawn, lightning strikes this tree and it starts chasing him. And as a kid, it doesn't sound that bad. And looking back at it, there is quite a lot of person in a rubber suit that looks a little bit like a tree running across a lawn. But at the time, it's terrifying. I won't spoil the ending for you, but it's scary to watch as a kid.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Sounds batshit crazy.
Well, with that nightmare fodder, I think it's time to call it a day.
My fingers just slipped.
Oh, God, what have you bought now?
Corleone's Empire.
You shouldn't put it there, Andy. I've told you about that.
Oops.
Oh, dear.
While we're on the subject of, rewinding slightly, before you close the show, going back to D&D, I just want to give a little bit of a shout out to the Waffle Crew, #the Waffle Crew, who've been running a series called Dice Camera Action over on the D&D Twitch channels. I just think if you haven't already heard of it, it's well worth a watch. It's really entertaining. They're something like 78 episodes in now. No, 86 episodes in, sorry.
That's a lot.
That is.
Is that one of the ones run by Chris Perkins?
That's the one, yep.
So Chris Perkins is the DM?
Yeah.
Okay. I do need to watch him because he is he's one of the writers for Wizards of the Coast, isn't he?
He
So
is.
he wrote Storm King's Thunder, which is the adventure I will be taking you through very soon.
Excellent.
Ooh. Foreboding.
Yeah, I'm fairly sure he's chaotic evil.
He also runs the Acquisitions Incorporated sessions, which are the Penny Arcade guys.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting live session if you ever watch any of them.
So I think I started watching about episode 70, and I'm now tempted to go back to the very start. It's that good.
Oh, blimey.
The thing is, each session's like 2 hours long, so there's at least something like 140 hours of listening there.
Well, thank you very much for listening, ladies and gentlemen. If you've actually liked this for some bizarre reason, then please give us a review on iTunes and share it with your
You've
friends.
recently suffered a blow to the head.
Don't snigger. What Andy meant to say was because you've got excellent taste.
Yeah.
Yes, you have excellent taste, and I think you need to share those excellent tastes with your family and friends.
Absolutely.
So we'd much appreciate if you could give us a review on iTunes or share us on social media. Speaking of social media, we are on Twitter. Now, we are collectively at Polyhedron C. Individually, I am Wahoffel
I am at Sonic H with a 0.
And I'm at John_Cage.
We are also on Facebook at facebook.com/Polyhedron Collider. And we are on Board Game Geek, and the Geek Guild number is 2726, but you can get to that from polyhedroncollider.com.
Nice.
It's all tied up in a neat little bow.
It is indeed. Tatty bye, folks. We'll speak to you in a few weeks.
Or arrivederci and all that.
Catch you later.